Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Power Hour podcast. And I'm so excited today because a very special guest is with me, Ulrikke, Power Pages expert and Power Platform community legend. I would definitely say. Ulrikke, would you agree with that? No?
Not at all.
No?
I feel like I'm just getting started. So I look
Yeah.
at the legends and I get starstruck and I get all awkward and when I'm at conferences and I walk past people and I go, yeah, me at a legend is like, no. I'm just, yeah, no,
I
I'm looking at the legends.
I mean, like, I think for the Power Pages space, right? I'm not going to say it's new because it's been around for some time and it adjusted from a platform that was existing and Microsoft bought it and now it kind of transitioned into Power Pages, which we can talk about. But I think a lot of people struggle with learning Power Pages because I'm sure you've spoken to a lot of people in the Power Platform. They've transitioned from non-technical backgrounds coming into Power Pages. So I think this episode will specifically resonate with them because I can see a lot of people wanting to make that transition, but it's really tough for them to understand the skills that they need to get those roles because there are a lot of Power Pages roles and they pay very well, but there's not so many people with the skills. I think there's more nowadays, but definitely, a few months ago there were hardly any. I remember people struggling to fill those Power Pages roles. So I say legend in that sense because I feel like in terms of Power Pages, you've done a lot of community work and you've really helped share that knowledge when the knowledge was actually quite scarce. So I think myself and everyone in the community appreciates that a lot.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And in that respect, I don't consider myself a legend. I've just been around for a long time, and I've accumulated a lot of knowledge and maybe also shared a little bit. But yeah, you have people like Jim Novak, for instance, that people rarely hear about. It's not been predominantly, it's not been really active in the community lately, but is just a phenomenal resource. You look at someone like Corey or Nick Doelman, for instance, or Nicholas Hayduke. Those people have been around since before Microsoft bought the product, and they know how the sausage is made. They know the code inside the beast. They are legends, in my book at least. But I do appreciate being able to help others. So whenever I encounter something that I don't know the answer to, because I've been around for so long, if I don't know this, chances are a lot of people don't know this.
Hmm.
So that's the angle that I'm coming from often when I share content. It's like, oh, yeah, if this benefited me, then there are a lot of other people that don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's a big reason why you started your blog, right? Because, was it that you were tired of looking for the answers somewhere else? So you were like, oh, okay, I can search it up, and when I'm Googling, I'll actually find my own blog that answers the questions. Was that the big motive of you starting that blog?
Yeah, and it was a goldfish memory kind of thing, right? Because I had colleagues coming. I was in, at the time we had a lot of Power Pages projects and a lot of CRM projects going on at the same time. And I had a project manager, Geir, who was overlapping in different projects. And I would come up against a problem and I would take time to look at it. And it goes, well, Ulrika, didn't you solve this on that customer 6 months ago? And I went, no, Jesus, you're right. And I went back into my own code and I go, how come I didn't remember that? But of course, like I said, we were in multiple different projects at the same time. The product is evolving so fast. There's so many things going on. I couldn't keep all of that knowledge in my head. So then I started to write it down. So whenever I would solve something, or this is a good way of getting, timeline and dynamics and notes and attachments and getting those visible in a good way in a Power Pages site. If I solve that for one customer, I would grab the code and the configuration, put that into a blog post and put it up online so that next time if I Google it, chances are I would find my own blog post and not having to solve the same thing twice. So it
Hmm.
came from that need of finding my own stuff easily. And I think if you look at blogs, especially for dynamic stuff and old school stuff, you'll find that it's called My Notebook or something from the person that's published stuff, and it's from eons ago. It started as, if I could use OneNote on my local machine or in the cloud, or I can use a blog. For me, it's the same thing. Um, but yeah, if I use the blog, then it could benefit someone else. And it's better searched indexed because
Yeah.
search in OneNote is kind of this and that.
And it definitely gets the word out, right? Because you're indirectly helping other people who might stumble upon the same problem that you were having. And Ulrike, I was going to ask this question later on, but I think it's a natural progression. So before we started the podcast, we were kind of speaking a little bit about Power Pages, more so when we started, but people really struggle to transition into Power Pages from traditional low-code, but they do want to. So what would you say to those people? Like, how much programming, how much of that kind of trajectory, that realm, do they need to know to succeed in Power Pages?
It's a very good question. And I think the answer is evolving. Because it used to be that we had Dynamics consultant coming into Power Pages trying to learn front end. And then we had front enders coming in from React or Angular back in the day, and they were trying to grasp Dynamics. And we saw that the front-end developers, they grasped Dataverse much easier than the Dataverse consultants grabbed front-end development. Because usually you have programmers that really shouldn't do front-end stuff, usually. And so I found that the web developer coming in understood the product way faster and much more intuitively than the Dynamics people would. What the pro coders, the React or Angular people often struggle with is that the code is so distributed. Because you want to change something on a form, you put a form out of the box on a page that has a certain behavior that renders a certain set of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, right? You want to edit that in a way, you put JavaScript on that form, and that lives on the form, where professional React developers want to have their code structured in a certain way. They want to have it in a repo somewhere. They want to have source control on it. But it is actually better in a Power Pages perspective to embed that customized code into the product, the fiber of the Power Pages site instead. So, and that I find is the thing that causes the most friction for pro front-enders coming into Power Pages is that thing that they have to let go of their way of working in terms of structure and best practices, and it's rubbing them the wrong way. So that being said, there are ways to work with Power Pages which feels more like that. So you take SASS, for instance, which is a way of working with CSS that allows you to use functions and variables and almost like working with JavaScript, really, but it's in CSS, and it all renders down to a CSS file that's uploaded to your page. When I work with CSS like that, I download the Power Pages site to my local machine. I can use GitHub Copilot with it. I upload it to the Power Pages site. I will commit changes to Git. There are branching strategies for that, and you can work with it like any other pro code web development project, but it is more difficult to get that to work well in a big team, because what it means is you have to keep, I don't know if you've worked a lot with DevOps, but I feel traumatized by merging branches in DevOps in GitHub, because it rarely goes well. Maybe it's my limited knowledge about how to do it right, but I always feel that's a struggle. And of course you have in a traditional web development project, what's in Git, what is committed code in master branch would be the master, would be the kind of the source of everything, would be what's built. But in fact, in Power Pages, it's what's live on the site, on the internet, which is the master. And that also kind of flips so yeah, those kinds of friction points is it that I see most often. And also now we have to realize we have people coming into the platform from Copilot. Right, someone comes into Copilot and they look at, oh, what's this? What's this Dataverse thing? Mm. Right, so you have a completely new angle into the whole platform. Power BI, what is that? 2 different kinds of apps. Interesting. What's this? Mm. And so, of course, all the products have to align to those people who come in from AI, the AI perspective, and be a low-code tool in that sense, like the other. But I think, and I know this is in one of your questions as well, is that Power Pages is one of the most pro-codey tools in the box. Mm-hmm. I state that you should not venture into live Power Pages, go live with a Power Pages site if you do not know web development. And I stand by that. You cannot, and you should not, or you can, but you should not configure and drag and drop and style your site and then publish it and be done with it, because it will not be good enough for anything in my perspective. So, and that's just my opinion, and anyone's free to challenge that, of course. But I do feel like if you're going to publish something on the web, that you need to be a web developer and know what you're doing, or at least have a friend who is.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And Ulrike, are there moments where you're collaborating? Because as you mentioned, the Power Platform is a space where a lot of people transition who don't have that traditional programming/web development knowledge. Are you constantly finding yourself working with those kinds of people, or 90% of the people are web developers that you're working with on Power Pages projects?
It's a very good question. I have on my team, we are usually Power Platform consultants, is what we call us generally. A lot of us do both Power Apps and Power Automates. We do a lot of work with Power Pages simply because I'm who I am, right? And I've worked with, have a lot of experience with it. So naturally, the customers gravitate towards us when they need a Power Pages site, they gravitate towards us. We get a lot of that kind of work. But also, Copilot Studio agents very much. And also with Power Pages, there's a myriad of other things. We use Azure Blob Storage for storing documents often. So there's often an Azure resource in the project. Authentication. I know way too much about Azure AD B2C. I know more about Azure AD B2C and Enter External ID than I should. And now, this week, I'm learning about Auth0. And now I know how Auth0 works. I'm not supposed to know how Auth0 works, but I do now because I have to learn. Because some projects, we don't have those resources. So then I have to, or I'm curious, too curious, and I will dive in and say, how hard can this be? And I'll dive in, right? And I'll learn about it. But in some projects, we have interaction designers who live in Figma, who can dream up the most beautiful things. And I love implementing kind of state-of-the-art interfaces into Power Pages. It's one of my favorite things in the whole world. If I could just do that, I would be happy. But usually we don't. And it's up to me to be the front ender and to say, well, let's look at your website and send me your PowerPoint template, and we'll grab whatever works there and we'll infuse your Power Pages site so it looks and feel like your brand and your identity. And we'll just make it up as we go along.
Yeah. And I think just on that, Ulrike, I think with Power Platform, it's a bit of a weird job to have, right? Because people don't really know what to do with it when you're an organization. So they don't really have the right team structure around it. And what do I mean by that? For example, model-driven apps. Like, I stand by the fact that you shouldn't be building a model-driven app from scratch without having an entity relationship diagram to back it up, right? Doesn't make any sense in my books. The whole thing is based on data. If you don't get the data right, it's not looking good going on. And shameless plug, the program I've got coming out is going to be showing that stuff. It's super important. Yeah. And I think people within our space need to know those skills, right? Data, things that Power Platform might not associate to directly, like Azure as well, because we don't have the support that established teams, for example, in web development traditionally would have, someone in the front end, someone in the back end, etc. It's a little bit different. So I think we're having to learn faster than a lot of traditional professions, just because we're effectively thrown into a company. Oh, I want Copilot, I want this, I want that, but we don't have the support around us. So 100% I agree with what you've experienced, because I've experienced it as well. I guess when it comes to...
Can I just ask you then?
Yeah, please.
If that's okay. But how have you played with Plan Designer lately, like last week or this week-ish?
I haven't, no, but I have seen it, obviously, like before in the MVP Summit. It was a big focus of it.
Yeah, because we had a hackathon in February. We played with it and it was absolutely rubbish. It was just, the consultant who tried it, he spent 5 hours trying to get it to create an EID and it's something we could actually use. And he abandoned it eventually, and he created his own data model in like 20 minutes. And he was just raging about this. Nothing's done when it's done. And then we are now in a kind of a hackathon thing where one of our customers have invited us to be part of a hackathon, create a POC. This is the use case. And I asked the same consultant, go back into Plan Designer. He's like, no, I don't want to spend time do. And I said, well, try it again. And he was blown away. And it actually now creates Power Pages sites as well, which it didn't do just a couple of weeks ago. And what it produces it blows my mind. It really does. And I fully agree with you that you should not do a model-driven app without having the ERD in place. And I've been on some massive projects, and I can tell you there are two things that drive cost, and that is changing the data model as you go. It's the most expensive thing you can do. So taking those 2 extra months up front when all the developers are so eager to get going and say, no, we're going to think about this properly. Let's test this data model, and they're going to freak out. But that is the most economic, smart way of working with it to make sure that your data model is solid before you get going. And the other thing is ALM. If you don't have a dedicated ALM person in a big project, it's going to bite you in the butt, because it is the most important thing. And run that POC thing with an empty solution through to production. Get that going day one. Run through production every single day. Just come on until it's published. You can do that, doesn't it? Doesn't matter. Because I see so many projects where they develop in a vacuum, and suddenly they're going to go live. They go, oh wow, this doesn't work and that doesn't work, and there's an issue here, and there's so many things that can go wrong with ALM these days. So that's kind of the two things that I would absolutely recommend people going with. And now I've completely forgotten where we started with all of this, but I'm sure you have your sheet and you know where this conversation was supposed to go.
No, I love it. Like, I 100% agree. Firstly, I think ALM is so important. And I think in the Power Platform specifically, it branches out to 2 aspects. Please correct me if you disagree, but I think an environment strategy and then also a deployment strategy. So having those 2 things intact before you get started, I think is so important. Equally so, you mentioned a point about the Plan Designer. I haven't had recent experience with it. I'm sure some people listening at home haven't messed around with it because they share probably my experience where I tried it once and I was like, this sucks, and then never did it again. So what would you say to those people? How is it now? Where is it going? And kind of what future do you see for it? I guess is my question.
Oh, best question I've had all week. How long do I have? No, but so let me tell you what we did with it. So this is the hackathon thing, right? So we have, like I said, a customer coming to us with a use case, and they say, this we want to. So it's a procurement process. So they want help with creating the RFQ, the request for quota. They want to help with distributing that to vendors, want the vendors to be able to give them documents and references, and then they want to check, are they ISO certified? How's their, if there's for instance, they're going to buy new social media acquire, or going to partners with someone on marketing, for instance. They want to check what the financials have been like for the last few years, a myriad of different things, right? They want help with that process from end to end. And what we did with AI first, we brought up ChatGPT, and we told ChatGPT about the case and what we're doing and why. And then we uploaded all the documents that was given to us by the customer. And we said, we have another AI somewhere in Power Platform, Plan Designer, who's going to help us with this use case. Can you please help us create a prompt that's going to work with Plan Designer to get it to do what we want it to do? And we went a few rounds with it, and ChatGPT gave us a great prompt, put that into Plan Designer, and boom, it gave us 6 different personas. That was the first thing it gave us. And then a business case, kind of a description of what it is, that's interpretation of what we needed to create. And we said, yeah, sure, looks good. Come on, give us user stories. Dung, 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 user stories. Spot on. And he said, oh, is it okay? But, adjusted a little bit. And I said, yes, let's move forwards. Gave us an ERD diagram. Says, this is the entities, this is the relationships, this is the columns I think you need. And we adjusted a little bit, and then we went on with it. And I said, all right, so we think you need this site for vendors, this model-driven app for this persona, this model-driven app for this persona, and for that persona, you need an agent, you need these product flows, and you need that Canvas app. And we went, great. And then we click, create. And that took us 3 days with a bit of fiddling and some meetings and some back and forth and documenting, because half of the thing that we're going to present to the customer at the end of the hackathon is our process. What did we do with the material that was given to us to get to the result that we're going to show off in the POC that we're going to demo for them in a couple of weeks? Because we wanted to show them the prompt and the way to work with it and how we got to where we got to. Because in a demo perspective like this, a POC, it doesn't matter really what the tables are called and what the columns are called, because the customer will be able to kind of bridge the gap with their imagination. We understand that supplier and vendor are the same thing, and though we don't use their words, but to see something where a customer can come in and log into a Power Pages site, a vendor or a supplier, see the RFQ, answer, fill in a form using an agent, for instance, new capability of Power Pages that are preview now, where you can add a form on the Power Pages site, add an agent on top of it, and the agent will be able to give you a turn-based answer the question, filling in that form for you through the agent perspective. You log in and you're in your context to fill in data as data through that. Upload documents, and that will be directly uploaded to SharePoint where they want document storage. And then you have an agent on top of that SharePoint site, and you have access to Dataverse, and you have access to all the legal data about that vendor to give the internal people working in this process the insight into this vendor. What kind of references do they have? Have they had any scandals in social media the last 2 years? All the things they want to consider, and also their documents and the answers to that form on the Pages site, right? They'll have access to all of that. And suddenly you can give the agent the task to compare the answers and the documents and all of the financial data for these 3 vendors and show me where they differ. Because I don't want to see that they all have 3 outstanding references. They all 3 no scandals in social media, but economically this one stands out. That's what I want to see. I don't need to see where all the green boxes are checked. I want to see the thing that I need to consider as a human. And then, of course, I want to see all check boxes for the other things. But let me spend time where I, as a human, need to spend time to see the difference between these 3 and not having to go through and collect and look at all the other things. So that's kind of how we work with Plan Designer as the central architect of the whole thing. Because when we go into the real project, if we win this, we show the hackathon, the demo to the customer is happy, says, go on, go build it. Then what we'll do is we'll take what POC, that Plan Designer and that data model and those flows and model-driven apps and all of that, and we'll look at that and we'll make documentation based on it, and then we'll create a new environment and we will build it from the ground up. I will not use Plan Designer in production, ever. I never, ever, ever use the Copilot creation experience in an environment where I need to move it somewhere else. They're too messy. It's not good enough. The quality isn't good enough. And I need to know, this is what I create. This is my work. This is my craft. And I still need to be in control of it. But for a POC and as a thought partner and to help me see the things that I would miss, it's perfect. And to get speed up. Yeah. Absolutely.
And for organizations as well, right? Because it's always about the bottom line. I think Sean Astrahan, who runs the Architects Accelerator, always says it's all about the money. And it's true. I think everything that you're doing can always dial back to either saving costs or making more money or managing the money that they're making. It still kind of dials down to that. And I think with the Plan Designer, a POC, that could take a solution architect a week, maybe even 2, maybe even 3, depending on how big it is. But with a Plan Designer, it sounds like it can take a few days, right? Because it's kind of built that out all for you, and you can show that directly to the customer. So it raises an interesting point as well about, I think, the direction Microsoft want this to go to, and the changes I've seen made to it. It looks like they want it to be something where you can type in a prompt and everything's thrown into your solution, and then you can deploy it and people can start using it, and happy days. Yeah, I think you would agree, and based on what you've said, we're very far off that, right? But I think where we're at is, I think there's a lot of value in, as architects, thinking through what we're doing. And I think when you're writing your prompt, whether on ChatGPT or on the Plan Designer, I think it's really good because it's a reflective exercise. It's you understanding the customer's use case, you understanding the gap in your knowledge, and then it building that out, and you can see the gaps right in front of you. You're not just trying to visualize everything in your brain or on a piece of paper. It's kind of doing it all within the components that you're going to be using. So I think there's a lot of potential for it, but I agree with you. I think we're very far off it going directly into production. Yeah, it's interesting stuff with the AI and Copilot, and where we're going with everything. And
Yeah, just based on what you just said,
yeah.
my brain goes off in a million different directions because there's so much about what you just said that is true, but also it's all being challenged every single day.
Mm-hmm.
So just a few kind of tangents. So when you talk about AI and yeah, using the Copilot experience to create apps or create, using the Plan Designer, we would never use it in production. And then you look at vibe coding. So definition of vibe coding is you make something without looking at the code, without even relating to the code or understanding how it works. Meaning, if you want to vibe code in Power Platform today, you could by asking it to create you a Canvas app. And you look at the GUI for the Canvas app, the interface you get, and you say, done, publish. You don't have to look at the code. You don't have to relate to the code. That is vibe coding, essentially. If you are a developer and you do know how it works, and you can't be a vibe coder, that's another thing. And then vibe coding as a pro coder or with Claude Sonnet or something like that, and GitHub Copilot, you can also choose to do the same thing. You can prompt your way to an app, or you can publish it as a web app or something, and just doing it out into the internet. And then you come back a week later and you say, and Scott Giroux showed this at the ending keynote at Color Cloud. I'm sure you were there.
That was amazing. Yeah.
Right. So he vibe coded something. It was a model-driven app. It was connected to Dataverse. He authenticated through Enter ID. It was brilliant. He created that, and he went back a week later and he said, add an edit button to the thing through a prompt. And the thing went, sure, Scott, no problem. Let me just bing, done. Added 14 lines, removed 1,876 lines. And Scott went, what did you remove? I asked you to add a button. And so the question comes up of, all right, so if we're vibe coding and you can't, where's the governance? Where's the maintenance? Where's that angle of, because it's evidence is it can't do it. It ruins its own thing. How do you know that app, if you publish that update, it's the same that you had before it added the button and removed over 1,800 lines of code? Because if you don't look at the code, how do you know it removed? And I had a conversation with Nick Doelman about this on a podcast as well, and he said, well, why don't you just throw it away? It took you 2 days to create it through vibe coding. Why would you even want to govern it? Just throw it away, create a new one. And that's going to be more up to date because you can bet you that what are the libraries you used, there's another version of it and blah, blah, blah. Right, create a new one. And then we go, well, how do you know that the new app is the same as the one you already had that you're now throwing away? Well, you have to test it. And suddenly testing becomes this huge thing. If you have watertight testing for everything, then you can create that app a million times. As long as it passes through your test, you'll know that it's the same app. It does the same thing, passes all your tests. Well, is it the same app? I don't know. So I think the advent of vibe coding itself, I think it's a fad. It's going to go away. It's not going to. I don't believe in it as a way forward for technology, but I think it has presented us with a lot of dilemmas and a lot of questions that we now have to consider in this new age of development, because development has fundamentally changed, and now started to change with low code. And our version of low code, say we're in low code 3.0 now, because low code you started with, back in the day. And Nick always talks about the Great Plains and stuff that he worked on a bazillion years ago. That was kind of the first configure your way to something interface. And that was the first low-code version. It started then. And I love how this advent of these new buzzword thingies kind of flips our heads around, and then you have to consider this from a new angle. And that's what I like about it. So that's kind of the first tangent that my mind goes on. So no, I would never use it in production. But yeah, it's very interesting to see how it changes how we approach even coding, for sure. And then I had another point, which I forgot about.
Well, I hope it comes back to you, because I've been thinking about, I watched that podcast that you did with Nick about throwaway apps, and that's been stuck in my mind because I can't think of a reason not to do it. And it's weird.
I love that.
And it bothers me
Isn't
because
that crazy?
yeah, it's crazy. I can't think of a reason not to do that. It doesn't make sense. If it's the same app but better, and you delete the other one, or you archive it like as a backup and you just pull the other one in, like, I guess it raises a question: what's the point of you and I in 15 years, right? I mean, someone could just type that up. I mean, yeah, there's a lot of weird stuff going into this, and development's always interested me. And I've always kicked myself because I wish I was that guy. I do kind of do this, which is a little bit sad, but I sit in a dark room and I kind of like do my work, right? But I wish I could be that guy with like 6 monitors, with like code on each monitor, just like, but it's not the case anymore. I've got ChatGPT and this one.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman in Swordfish, like and
Yes.
black screen, Matrix stuff going on, and I
Right.
love that movie. I'm going to see that, and yeah, I know the feeling.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's something I've been kicking myself because it's something I wanted. I thought I wanted, but it's changed. I don't think we're doing that anymore. I think we've got, okay, you might have several screens, but you've always got GitHub Copilot, or you've got your generative AI helping you optimize that, even and making sure you understand it. But it's crazy how we're effectively the person in the middle now, I think, or even the person at the end of the spectrum. Someone's helping you write that code, optimize that code, and you're just checking it. You're the human in the loop, which I think it's really strange. And I think ChatGPT released an update, and I didn't read too much about it, so I'm very much paraphrasing based on just what I read. But it can code while you're asleep. You can automate coding tasks or something. I have no idea what it was, but I think it's something along those lines. It's just going to be super interesting to watch this space. I guess it raises another question I had, Ulrikke, about Power Pages and Power Platform in general. Like, I think a lot of people in this space come from like a Dynamics background, a SharePoint background, Power Apps, Power Automate, RPA, those types of things. Is it worth for them to start learning Power Pages? Because as you've mentioned, there's a lot more to it, right? You should learn traditional web development, front end, back end, etc., to start building Power Pages sites to production. So is it worth for those people with traditional SharePoint, Power Apps, Power Automate experience to start learning Power Pages?
Very interesting. I'm not sure if it's particularly worth for them to do it, but I think for everyone. Because I think what we saw at Color Cloud, so you were in my workshop at Color Cloud, a full day workshop on Power Pages. And at the beginning of the day, I asked around to see who was there and why they were there. And all of the people in the room said, we recognize that Power Pages is blowing up and we need to get on it. And that is what I hear everywhere.
Yeah.
Everywhere I hear that. That it's up and coming. My manager's asking for it, that my team's asking for it, my customer's asking for it, and we just need to upskill fast because everyone wants one. And also what I see from Microsoft is when it comes to Power Platform and external data, with Power BI, you can publish your dashboard online anonymously or to authenticated users. You can show your data to external users. With Copilot, you can have an anonymous and an external type of Copilot through Copilot Studio, and then you have Power Pages, which is really the only interfaces a Power Platform perspective has to an external user. That puts Power Pages in a really unique perspective, or a unique place, because you can publish Power BI reports directly to a Power Pages site. That integration's been there for 7 years. You can now publish a Copilot Studio agent to Power Pages and have their interaction. So I had a conversation with a customer the other day. We had a Power Pages project lined up, and he said, you know what, actually, we postponed the Power Pages project. We're going to focus on having a Copilot experience as the interaction point with our customers instead. So we're going to do that first. And I said, great, where's that going to live? And he said, what do you mean, where is it going to live? Yeah. How are you going to expose it to external users? And he went, right, on the Power Pages site. I'm like, yes, exactly. So I think from a Power Platform perspective, if there is another thing than Copilot Studio that you need to learn, because everyone is now learning Copilot Studio and how a multi-agent experience and an agent-to-agent protocols and MCP servers and everything. But if there's another thing you need to learn, Power Pages would be the thing I would go to, because that is going to be the future of the interaction layer between your external people and your data through the Copilot experience. That is going to be the interface. And then you can log in and you can handle your own data and keep that up to date. And you have the self-service and you have all of the other things that comes with Power Pages as a product. That's always been there. But that key thing, I think that's the driver behind all of this. That and BC, because BC is also blowing up.
Yeah, no,
Business
BC's
Central.
everywhere, isn't it? I've noticed as well.
Everywhere.
Yeah, no, for sure. I've been doing a bit of data migration on BC, which is as fun as it sounds, I must say. And yeah, it's showing up everywhere. So it's a little bit strange because a lot of people with the CE experience, they haven't really worked with the ERP systems, so they struggle a bit.
Or they work with the beast that is finance and operations into a right, which is a whole different podcast episode.
Yeah, no, I've heard some stories. I have, right, this is really funny. I have no experience with ERP systems. I'm just going to come out and say, other than data migration, which is more or less the same. I found myself in an ERP session in the MVP Summit by accident. So I looked on my phone and I thought it was this room, but it wasn't. So it was in this other room. And there was a very niche amount of people there. And it was the MVP Summit. So they were very, vocal in what they were saying, which, more power to them. But yeah, I mean, the people there really knew their stuff, right? Like if you do ERP, you really do ERP. So it's an interesting batch of technology.
Yeah. We, senior development, CE senior consultants have 3 to 5 years experience. To be a senior ERP anything, 30 years experience minimum. It's a completely different kind of section of people in my book. But also, I mean, once you kind of dive into what we should have a podcast episode where we bring on lots of people and we can have a kind of a trauma from ERP project session where we can work through it. And the stories these people can tell, it's just mind blowing. We have nothing compared to the ERP people because they've really been out on a winter's day, I must tell you. So that if you ever dry up and you don't have anyone to come on your podcast, then you kind of completed the whole circle. You talk to everyone, do a trauma discussion panel session where we can all share our stories.
I think that would genuinely work. And I think with the ERP, the struggle is don't get me wrong, with CE, it's data, it's generally kind of customer relationship management, people relationship management, etc. So the data is sensitive in a lot of cases, but with ERP, you can literally send things to the wrong country, right? And that costs a lot of money. So it's very tough if the data isn't right. No, but I'm gonna take your word for it. It's something I'm gonna look at. I mean, I wanted to play devil's advocate, Ulrikke, and then completely open to disagreement here. But someone might raise an argument to say, well, I'm a CE expert or an ERP expert or a Power Apps expert, Canvas app expert, whatever. Does it make sense for me to know Power Pages? Because I think with the rest of the Power Platform, and each one is respective in its own field. So it's got its own complications, its considerations. Believe me, it's, each one has its own subset of experts. But I think it's a bit more manageable to know, for example, Power Automate and model-driven apps or Power Automate and Canvas apps because they intertwine very well together. Equally so Power Pages too, because Dataverse is the native database. But someone might say, to learn traditional web development would take me years to get good at it, right? So does someone have to dedicate that to be their thing to get really good at Power Pages? Or do you think it can intertwine with the other Power Platform stack that they know? Does that question make sense?
It makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
And so actually, Nick Doelman, which I do my podcast with, he comes from CRM before CRM was CRM. He's been doing CRM for 30 years. That's his angle in, and he's top one person in the world on Power Pages. He proves that what you say is correct. Yes, you can. If you need to, you can. I don't see any reason why you can't. And believe you me, he does not know web development. He's told me like for 2 years straight, oh, I have it on my bucket list. It's now on number 3 things I'm going to learn. And then once I've learned web development, I'm going to learn to play the guitar. And I go, dude, can't I just do the web development thing and you can go straight to the guitar? Do you have to know CSS really? Because I come from the other end. Right, I come from web development I do HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP is what I come from, and so adopting Power Pages felt very natural to me. I used to do SharePoint internet branding. That went away as a thing you did, and so I looked for something else in the platform. I found Power Pages. Oh, that's web, so that's CSS, JavaScript. No, I know that, and I can do that. It was my skill set, just a different product. So that's how I fell into it. But I think when Nick started, you as a Power Platform consultant, you knew a bit about everything. And you did whole project yourself. When I said earlier that I had 5 projects going, 5 customers at the same time, I did everything. I did the model-driven app, I did the flow, I did the Power Pages stuff, I did the back end, the front end, everything. Nowadays, I rarely do that because there's bigger teams. The platform's bigger, the products are bigger, the capabilities are bigger, the functionality is bigger. Not one person can know everything about everything anymore. It's impossible. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a long way of saying if you have to and the project is small enough, then yeah, sure you can. There's no reason why you should not. But if it's not in your native skill set, if it's not something you're comfortable with, the front end of web development, then find a friend. Mm. It's like I talk to my guys all the time. It's like, should I learn React? And they go, no, you shouldn't. You don't need to. We can do React. You do all the other bits. We can do the React stuff. Don't think about it. But the more I look at it, the more I think, no, I need to learn React. PCF components React. Power Pages goes into that. Now we can have PCF components on a Power Pages site. And I look at it and I go, I want to learn React. So then I will. But if there's no incentive, if it's something that you're forced to do and it's not in your natural skill set, then I think we got it. Mm-hmm. You can do what you do best and find a friend who knows how to do Power Pages well.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's really good words of wisdom. And the workshop I was at that you hosted, which was really good at Color Cloud, I definitely took that away from it. I think with Power Pages comes a subset of skills that you need, but you don't need to know it all, right? Because you can have teams that help you with it. I guess let's say let's wrap up a use case, right? And just so people at home listening to this can take home, kind of hit that point home and take this home with them. So let's say, I'm a Power Platform professional, I work with Power Apps, Power Automate, etc. But a Power Pages opportunity just slams on my desk, right? I'm the only Power Platform consultant within this company. The opportunity is there. They need to showcase their internal data externally to people who are authenticated. So Power Pages is perfect for that. Where do they start? Do they open up ChatGPT and say, I have a Power Pages project, and now what do I need to know? Like, where do they start?
I was prepping for an upcoming session, and I tried to do that just to see what it would come up with. And it made up stuff in the interface that isn't there. So if you do that, then you'll have to unlearn some truths that you've learned along the way. Now, actually, I do have a very good recipe for this. So Power Apps in a day is you have to invest 2 days first. You do Power Apps in a day, and you do Power Pages in a day. So those are 2 8-hour courses you can do online in your own language. A lot of Microsoft partners, they host these in-a-day events. And the first one builds on the second one. So you can't really do the Power Pages one without having done the Power Apps thing first. What you will learn is you'll learn how Power Platform is set in the Azure stack. You'll learn how business applications play into everything. You'll understand why the platform exists as it is, what low code is and what it's not, where we code and where we do not code, etc. And you'll learn to set up database, tables, security, apps, stuff like that. And then you move on to the Power Pages thing the next day, where you build on the infrastructure and the flows and the apps and the data model you built the day before, and you create a Power Pages site where you can buy coffee machines or something. By the end of those 2 days, you'll have a very good understanding of the whole stack and how it works and how the different dots are connected and what these pieces or how it moves and the veins and the muscles and the skeletons and everything. And then you can dive into the learning material if you need to. So you have a specific use case. There's something you need to solve. I need to have this form and this list and authenticate like that and da-da-da. That's when you go into the learning path and the module on learn, and you find the modules that you need in order to do what you need to do, and you find the documentation that supports that, and you set that up as out of the box as you can, and you make that work in a POC environment that you're playing with. And when you can validate the POC in a low code, out of the box kind of way, then you start developing the pro code stuff. Then you expand and extend it. That's when, and only then, does the web development aspect of this come in. Because up until this point, it's been point and click and build data model and to do all of those things. And then now, this is when you need to learn web development. This is when you need to understand accessibility, security, use the flow through a site, security. All of those things comes into play now. And how to go live and when and what that entails and all the other things you need to learn, to know, to have in place before you can go live. ALM stuff, all of those things. But up until that point, it's been about proving your concept, proof of concept POC. Do it as fast, as quick and dirty as you can. And then you continue and extend and expand. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, it does. And I think that I definitely took a lot of value out of it. And I think the people listening also would take a lot of value out of it. That's amazing. I think this episode was really geared towards people who want to pick up Power Pages, don't know where to start, and then also understanding what's coming. So I'm sure you keep up with the updates. What are you most excited about within the Power Pages space, Ulrikke?
Yeah, it is the agent experience for sure. I see Power Pages being completely repositioned as the home, the window into your organization and the data your external users need access to through the agent experience. And that agent will be an orchestration agent that will have other agents to play on. And now the advent of MTP servers and A2A protocols, it's really just opened the door to whatever you need. And the sky is the limit. And there's really no limit now to what we can do. So that is where it's going. So the days where we customize the UI to be exactly pixel perfect to what the customer needs, sure, we're going to have those projects going forward. But what we present to our customers is really that kind of future where you are guided through an experience rather than getting a bunch of forms and lists and input, because we are tired of that. So, and there's so many capabilities now, like, copy pasting from an Excel sheet into a form, right? We have automatic form filling, as it's called. You have that in model-driven apps, you have that in Canvas apps, and in Power Pages. You have the agent on form experience that was launched now at BizApp's launch event. They announced that. There's so many new things coming, and it's all AI driven. So yeah, that is absolutely what I'm most looking forward to.
Yeah, no, exciting space. I think the Power Platform in general, it's looking like Copilot and AI is completely taking over, but the people don't need me to say that for them to be able to see it. Ulrikke, I've had an incredible experience speaking to you. Thank you so much. At the end of the episode, I always like to roll out the red carpet. Where can the people find you? What are you up to? The floor is yours.
First, before I do that, I really just want to take a second to say thank you for having me on your show and how much I appreciate all the episodes that you've had already and all the amazing people that you have on your
Thank
show.
you.
Because you do get to a level of conversation which is deeper than I find most other people get to, and I really appreciate that, and it says a lot about you as a host. So thank you so much for a great conversation.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. Thank you so much. Yeah, I mean, I try. I make a joke. I was speaking to my girlfriend about all this Power Platform and stuff. She was like, "Stop talking to me about this," and I was like, "Fine, I'm gonna go find someone else to talk to." So I started the podcast from there. But
Stop talking to me about this.
Ironically, the university she works at is adopting Power Platforms, so joke's on you, Beatrice. But yeah.
Right. So when this podcast ends, we know why, because then she got a job at Power Platform.
Exactly. And then we can start talking about things. Exactly. So if it just ends suddenly, we've got our reasoning behind it. Sorry, guys. No, but thank you so much. Thank you so much for what you were saying. And yeah, it means a lot to me, really. I do try. And I do research my guests to make sure I'm understanding them and where they come from. And I got to know you at Color Cloud, which was incredible. So highly recommend to anyone listening to this, if you do, or if you can catch Ulrikke in one of the workshops, wherever you're attending, I recommend attending on my behalf, and you can tell her I sent you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that. It's really sweet. And just as a, short, we do have a workshop coming up at EPPC this summer in Vienna, 16th of June. So that's with Nick Doelman and Victor Dantas, two big swingers in Power Pages. We do have a Power Page workshop there. So if anyone wants to join us there, we would be very delighted to have you. And also, Nick and I do a podcast every 2 weeks, which is news and updates for the whole of Power Platform. But lately, it's been more of an AI rant / something. And now we're also diving into the hour-long thing, because every 2 weeks, there's so much news and updates to cover. And we have to cover it all because it's so amazing. You see the community really really show up and produce a lot of great content. We just have to share it all. So if you want to kind of have that news and update every 2 weeks, just check that out. And and it was lovely to have you on my workshop, and I love how interactive you are, and you ask so many good questions. You made the group feel alive, and I appreciate that.
I think I lost Ulrikke.
It was lovely.
Sorry, it just completely froze Ulrikke. So I caught it was lovely, and then it stopped. But I caught everything else before. I caught everything beforehand. Yeah, I'm so sorry about that. But all the links will be in the description for the workshop, for your podcast, and then also your LinkedIn. So if anyone wants to bug you, I'm sorry, in respect. But thank you so much for coming on, Ulrikke, and I'll catch you all later. Take it easy. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take it easy. Bye. Thank you.